Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. I was just sitting here resting, getting ready for the evening routine, and diddling around with YouTube and looking at some shorts. And I came across a couple that really struck me. One is a woman that the YouTube channel is called I Am Betty. And this is a woman that is dealing with Alzheimer's, and I'm not sure what the deal is with her husband, but they live together. They're probably in maybe their 80s, and their son either lives with them or is their main caregiver. I'm not really sure. But the video is Betty meeting herself in the mirror. Because of the nature of her illness and the nature of Alzheimer's, she doesn't recognize herself in a long mirror when she looks. She can see this woman and she says, "Who is that?" And she's so very kind with herself. And she says, "I know that I should know her name, but I don't remember her name. What is her name?" And she asks her son and she asks her husband, and they answer her and say, "Well, that's Betty." And she says, "But I'm Betty." And then the son says, "Well, that's Betty too. That's Betty also." And she says, "Oh, okay," because you have the same name or something like that. And she's touching the mirror, really fully enthralled with meeting someone new that shares her name, and no real cognitive out here understanding that is in fact her, which it ends, it's only a short clip. It's just less than a minute. It's maybe 30 minutes or 30 seconds, if that. But it ends with her saying, "Well then, it's very nice to meet you," or something like that. Just so gracious and so kind and so very sweet, that just exposed the whole soul of this wonderful, beautiful woman. And she said, "Well, I'm going to go get a good night's sleep since we have that settled, and thank you." And she kind of bows and ducks out and dips out. And what really struck me was the fact that being able to look at that brought up a sense of tear, crying in me, that, oh my God, that's just so precious to see someone that is meeting herself and being so very kind, so very kind. And if we were to meet other people with that same kind of kindness that we often extend to a stranger before we extend to ourselves, if we could knowingly look in the mirror and see that and say, "Well, Kate, it's just so nice to meet you. Wow," and take that objectivity and use that in our favor to be able to say, "I don't know her name. What's your name?" We don't often get that opportunity where we can, not know who we are in a mirror and then remember that as a positive experience. However, she was a beautiful representation of being able to see that God quality, that beauty, that childlike quality, that heaven quality, the ascended master quality, the love, whatever you call that, the divinity, that spark of, wow, universal energy. She was identifying that in the eyes and the face and the person that she saw. And it was such a beautiful representation that she was seeing that in someone that she thought out here in 3D was a stranger to her. And she was willing to extend that, to that stranger. And it let me know that oftentimes we give ourselves less credit than we will give someone else. And when we're doing that, we're really not always seeing the God quality of someone else very accurately if we can't see it within ourselves either. And so it's a two-way street, and she was just so kind and so gracious. It was really sweet. Like I said, it kind of made me tear up a little bit, at just the sheer preciousness of it, and not to downplay it all, or to put any kind of weird sappiness on it. It was just really, truly touching. And I was reading through the comments, and I was kind of stricken with that some people said, "Well, that's just so sad. It's just so this, it's just so that." And everyone has their reaction to that. Everyone is entitled to have whatever reaction or response that they want to with that. They have whatever they have. And yet I thought, why would I be able to look at that and feel saddened by it, that it exposed what she really was about at her core, that she's just as gracious with herself as she is a stranger, and that she's demonstrating that so beautifully out here. And her son, their son, is just so kind with them. I'm not subscribed to the channel, but I did watch a few of their shorts, and that he's just so kind and he's very giving with them. And so I highly doubt that was a one-off, and that she's not truly like that in her divine space, even though out here in 3D she has Alzheimer's and no cognitive memory, so to speak, of herself. But the ability to be able to look at ourselves and offer ourselves that kind of kindness, that kind of space, and not be put off by somebody's, strange face, or someone that shares the same name. She found a common bond of, oh, that's settled. It's time to get a good night's sleep. I was just puzzled with, I wonder why that brings a sense of sadness to someone. And I realized that it could be that seeing that kind of preciousness, sometimes when I was in my when I am, in my most vulnerable and wounded place, I can see something like that, and it can just really take me to the most wounded place in me, and it's just almost too crushing that, I have to put on my armament for a minute to go, oh, no, or start, I can feel my defenses start to come up. And so I understand whenever we see things like that, I get the psychology of it, but I thought, oh my goodness, that's too bad that anytime whenever I witnessed something that was so beautiful that it made me sad, that I wasn't able, until I started really changing my whole entire life, I wasn't able to get out of that sadness. And I used to tell, the people around me years ago that I don't watch stuff that makes me cry. If it's a sappy movie, if it's one of those, Hallmark movies, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see that. That's not for me. No thanks. I don't want that. And it wasn't that I couldn't cry or wouldn't cry. I cried all the time. It was just like, I'm not going to deliberately go into that experience to cry, knowing that it will spark that within me. It's bad enough that it just jumps up randomly. And so that's what it reminded me of, is that when we're seeing precious things like that, and it takes us to that deep wounding, it often is very difficult to get out of that space. And so we get kind of barricaded and, bordered up and walled up with, I can't allow anything to touch me at any level. And it, unfortunately, it takes away the other end of it as well. That yes, I barricade myself somewhat from, feeling the hurt and the sadness, but I also barricade myself from the joy and the happiness that's at the other end of that experience, because we're in, a polarized experience where we experience good and bad, positive and negative. So if I'm walling something off, if I'm walling off the bad, that means I'm walling off everything. It means that I'm walling off to the degree that I'm, detached from my feelings. It means that I'm disengaging and not allowing myself to see the beauty of things, or be sad whenever it's sad, and know that the way out of that is to actually go through that, to not just avoid that. But that's what it reminded me, and seeing that was that, the best way that I found was actually related to the next video, that getting in touch with me and what's the beautiful part of me is the same beautiful part that's in you and in everybody else. That kernel, that nugget of God, that divine spark, whatever you call that, in your world, that same thing that unifies every single one of us, even in our diversity. We have that unifying thing within us. We all come from the same place. It's only a matter of how much in touch are we with that. And I believe that Betty was very much in touch with hers. Certainly seemed that way. She looked very happy and very pleased to be meeting a new friend. And this other video that I saw was a woman who, someone had asked her, it was also a short, so it wasn't a full interview. Someone asked her, how do you view God, your relationship with God? And do you consider that a good thing? And she said, yes, it's almost romantic. And he seemed a little bit shocked, and he said, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? And she explained something that was not romantic in terms of man, woman, or man and man, whomever, whatever the relationship would be romantically in the traditional sense of it. It was that she said, I was in this worship and praise dance experience, and I went out into a field by myself, and I needed to repent. She was using words that I don't personally resonate with, or don't, use to explain things the same way. However, she was having the same kind of magical experience with herself and her creator, her divinity, being able to say, yeah, I've done some things that I'm really not feeling good about, and I'm worshiping and praising and saying, thank you for giving me life. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and lay this burden with you and say, how can I make this right? And she said, I just felt so much lighter. I felt like I'd met my best friend, and, that this was so sweet and so kind. And she said, the next morning I came back to that same field where it was light, and I could see that there was a path through these yellow flowers that was so beautiful. And I imagined that God was the word she used, that God was saying, oh, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you made it here. Let's go for a walk. And the guy said, and how is that romantic? And she said, because it's just so sweet and it's so kind. And she said, and I want more than anything that other people would find that space in them too, that they would know what that joy is, that they would know what it was, that it's just such a sweet, sweet feeling. And like I said, I wouldn't interpret that as necessarily romantic, because sweet feelings can happen watching videos. I felt a very sweet feeling overwhelm me with both of those videos, that is the sweetness, that when we reach into our own space, or we reach into nature, or in a relationship, if we can find it there, they're often very polluted and it's difficult to start there. That when we reach into that divine space, that God space, that sacred space within us, our creative space, whatever we call all of that, and we really get in touch with that and start seeing through that lens, put those goggles on and take off the other ones that, give us prejudice and give us hostility, that give us the hurt and the trauma and the drama of things. It's not that we get to just put on, rose-colored glasses and those things go away. It's that when we're able to put those other goggles on of, this is my divinity, this is that childlike wonder and quality within me, and this is the sweetness of that relationship when I connect with my God source energy, that helps me deal with the rest of this out here. Because remember, the woman mentioned that I had things I needed to repent for. She was very burdened when she went to this praise worship dance experience. She was very burdened with something, saying I needed to repent, and she was kind of whatever. And yet she was still able to say, look, I know that I can leave this burden here. Please show me what I can do. And she had that God space open up for her because she was willing to. That's half the battle, is when we yield to what's going on and say, yeah, there's some things that I really would like to be able to unburden my soul. And when we leave it to our own connection to God's source, whatever we call that, whatever religion or spiritual practice or anything in particular, when we yield that to that energy, it helps to open up that frequency and that portal of understanding ourselves as being that creative energy that's connected to that eternally and infinitely. And it helps to put not rose-colored glasses on. It helps to put on that wonderful divine space of, I can deal with everything because I know that I have this backing. I have this sweet energy. I have this divinity. I have the Father with me. I have God with me. I have whatever deity or whatever I call that. I have that peace that passes all understanding, that I have that with me, and I can therefore cope with anything that's already happened to me, and I can deal with anything that's coming towards me now, and I can walk with the confidence and the clarity to step into that and reconnect to that. Because once we establish it and we have that, wow, amazing experience, the first time we have that, it really sticks. We know how to get back to it. It might take a while. It might take, some work. And I haven't found for myself that I was able to get there just instantly without having to go through some things first. And when my faith is tested, of course it's going to be tested, and that will be arrested immediately if never mind, this doesn't work. And yet those very profound experiences, if I'm stuck somewhere in the dark or toiling around feeling, confused or clouded, or, oh my gosh, I can't do this, then I take myself back to remember when those experiences that you have had, what was that like, and remember that and get back to that feeling that, okay, I'm walking down a long dark tunnel, and I do know intellectually, I understand that there's a light at the tunnel. I do understand that, but I'm not really feeling it. It's not very bright, and I'm not really sure I even see that. And yet I've had demonstration in my life that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There always is, and you're not always in a tunnel. You're not always feeling this way. It's very easy for us to get into those loops and believe that this is never going to stop. This is, that fatalistic thinking. That's very common with anxiety and fear and, the culture that we live with here on earth. And that's very common. And so the way that we can help ourselves, the way that worked for me anyway, was to be able to say, okay, even though it doesn't seem like intellectually I understand, yeah, and no longer allow that rhetoric to come up of, yeah, it's probably not coming back, or it's not really real, or that's just stupid. It's really about training and retraining the mind from, we no longer say those things, and not picking up the chastising or the guilt or the shame of having problems to let go of those old loops. That those are loops that are deeply entrenched in most of us. We're used to thinking in that way. We were programmed that way, if you will, by the old way that Earth used to be. And in New Earth, that isn't the new frequency. The new frequency is to be able to release and let go and say, okay, that's right. And the more that I take agency of this situation with my mind, it's my tool that I have to use if I'm going to connect with heaven, or the upper rooms, or the upper realms, the upper frequencies, the 5D. If that's what I'm using, then my mind needs to be clear, and it needs to be unblocked in order to get right here with it, so that I can feel more genuinely everywhere that I'm looking, and everywhere that I see, and everywhere that I can be, that I'm looking more genuinely and more authentically. And most of us, we really want to have the immediate gratification of, okay, we're used to that. I'm used to a drive-through or a microwave or things like that, and we want to be able to say, look, I want instant, feel better when we're in that terrible place. But believe me, I can guarantee, for me anyway, and I have not seen this be untrue for anybody else that we've shared the same or similar experiences, that when we reach that place where we tap into that one time and we start feeling that, oh my goodness, yeah, that's okay, that's really that. It's that sometimes we get turned off because it goes away. And then we think, well, of course, that was just a one-off. Or we start finding reasons because we're afraid sometimes that it won't come back, or that we won't be able to get it back, or that it won't happen, because there is a lot of disparity on the planet that would tell us something different about those experiences of wonder, delight, and really being standing and being in the presence of God, if you will. There's a lot of things that would tell us that that's not really real, and see what's really happening out here. And yet there's nothing wrong with seeing what's happening out here and dealing with it by connecting in here. It actually changes the landscape of what this looks like out here. And it will change how we deal with what it looks like out here, because the world is not going to instantly change and just move into healed and whoop, all better. It's not going to happen like that, unfortunately. 171788, that it's going to just instantly get there. However, the more that we're able to connect with, I'm Betty, it's nice to meet you, the more that we can get in there and experience the joy of being ourselves, because we're experiencing the joy of universal energy just coming right through us, and connecting that with everywhere that we can, that it's very wholesome and authentic to do so, and disconnecting from those places that's not really the truest for me to connect right there, and being very kind with ourselves as we stumble and fall. It's okay that we do. We're expected to. We're learning how to walk all over again. Imagine, spiritual babies. We're all spiritual babies. No matter where we are in our walk, even if grown-ups stumble and fall sometimes, right? And so if we really take that care and that consideration, it's just difficult, because we want it to be here all the time. We want it to be here when we want it, and we want to really, most of us, we really want to get it without having to work too hard for it, because that's the culture that we've lived in, that we've created, is that our technologies have really outpaced, unfortunately, our ability to handle the spiritual responsibility necessary to get that one, so freely and so easily. And yet when we do, we can build that much more exponentially once we get there with it. And part of that is about being able to look in the mirror or look in the eyes of another person and say, wow, I can really see the divine in that person, or I see the wonder of that plant. That's such a beautiful orchid, or what a beautiful sunrise, what a beautiful cloud, what a beautiful tree, what a beautiful relationship I see between those two people. Whatever it is that we're appreciating, appreciation and gratitude are one of the greatest connectors that I know of to help get through that tunnel of, I know that intellectually I understand, and I've been telling myself that there's light at the end of this tunnel, and yet I'm not really sure I see that. That's one of those things that working through the paradigm and the old programming is about saying that despite the fact that I intellectually understand that, and apparently I've hit a roadblock with synthesizing that in this part of me, is that I'm going to need to just keep telling myself that, yep, I intellectually understand that, and if that's the only place that I do understand that and that I can, receive that right now, by reminding myself of that to avoid falling back into the old paradigm, because the old paradigm, once we fall back into into that mud bog, it's that much harder to try to get up out of it again. So it's about really preventing ourselves from going back there, and yet being very kind when we do. Remember, spiritual babies, we're all in one stage of, development or another. And the less evolved, or the less spiritually in tune that we've been, doesn't mean we can't, grow exponentially. It just means that at some area of us, we're not growing internally at the same rate. And so some area of us may be an absolute infant, while another is a warrior that's up there with a PhD in me. And it could be that. And so it's the kindness and the compassion and being able to appreciate and remind that mind thing. This is the filter between heaven and earth. Is that, then I need to really make sure that that mind thing is not able to pull the spirit part of me back into something that's more 3D. So I hope that's made sense to you in some way, and I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember, get within your skin, because you're divine. It is so, so fine. And if you were meeting yourself for the very first time, would you be able to look in those eyes and say, it's very nice to meet you, thank you, or would you have trouble doing that? And if you would have trouble doing that, then come inside, and be willing perhaps to ask, why? What is it about me that other people can probably see beauty in me that I'm not able to see? What is it that I can do to really tap into that place that I know exists in there? Even if I don't really believe it 100%, I don't need to. I just need to be willing to believe it. At least 0.5% willing to believe it is opening the door. So get busy and have fun when you do. Take care of yourselves, as I said, and get within your skin, because you're divine. It is so, so magical, so beautiful, and so, 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 so fine. Take care of your beautiful selves, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye, my beautiful friends.